This is how to price your beadwork. In this video, I'm going to show you how to price your work using a spreadsheet I've provided. This video is intended for beaders who want to sell their work and are unsure how to price it. This is just a guideline and you can price your work however you want to. I've created a template that's linked down in the descriptions. Just make a copy and follow along. Please make sure not to use the master sheet as your work will not be saved. When determining price for a product, there are three things to keep in mind: cost, consumer, and competition. We're going to start with price. So open your spreadsheet and let's get started. The first place we're going to start is the materials. So the way that I'm doing this is we have our quantity used, our total quantity, and our price, and that's going to come up with how much it costs for each of our items. So we're going to imagine that we are working on these sunflower earrings. So first, for our felt, what I did is I took my piece of felt here. You can see it's 9 by 12, and then I approximated how many earrings I could fit on this piece of felt. So since we're making a pair, we're going to put 2 earrings, and you can see I can fit about 12 on here. And then when it comes to price, so I just opened up my Amazon account, I looked at how much it cost me, and I bought this 12 pack for about $20. So since it was a 12 pack, I'm going to put 12 divided by 24. So this is because I can fit 12 in a sheet of 9 by 12, but there was 12 in this pack. If I was buying them from Michael's, for instance, they're like $1.75 for one sheet. So all I would have to put here is $1.75. But because this one, I bought it in a big pack, we're going to do this. Next, we're going to look at beads. So one way you can do this is by measuring the grams. So I have a small food scale here, and I can use that to measure how many grams are left in my vial after I complete a piece. Another way you can do this is just approximating on your vial and looking at it and just say, okay, I've used roughly an eighth or a fifth or half, whatever it is. I'm using multiple colors here, so if I wanted, I could also just weigh my beadwork and see how many grams it is. Since the felt is really light, it won't really affect the total grams. I think these earrings use about 5 grams. So you can see right there, I used about 65 cents worth of beads. So we didn't use any cabs, bandings, but we did use some findings. So in this case, what I'm going to do is say I used my fingernail posts. And I know they're $1.50 each. Lastly, I have packaging. That includes any mailers, tissue, bubble wrap, boxes, business cards, thank you cards, things like that. So for this same thing, if you just use a basic bubble mailer, you can use the same method we have before, or if you know roughly how much it is for multiple items, you could just put that price in right here. So I know it cost me about 30 cents for my thank you card, 30 cents for my envelopes, and then my other materials are really negligible, so I'm just gonna say 75 cents. There we go. So materials are actually really cheap. It only cost me around $3 to make these earrings. So the main thing here is our labor. As we all know, what happens with beadwork is you don't actually have to put that much money into it when it comes to materials, but you do put a lot of time. To calculate our labor, we're going to go off of our time and an hourly rate. So make sure you're paying yourself fairly. Could you hire anyone to do your beadwork? Of course not. It is a skill that you've worked on for a long time, and you have to take that into consideration when you're paying yourself. And this is kind of the thing I'm the most proud of making, which is the labor tab. So if you go over here, we have a little spreadsheet with how to figure out how much to pay ourselves. So we have the labor of how much we put into a piece of work, and then we also have how we're going to figure out our hourly rate. So the first thing we're going to do is look at our time. So how much time did you spend designing the item? Did you map it out? Did you draw it out? Anything like that beforehand? Or did you just grab some beads and get started? So we're doing this by calculating our hours. So what you can do is you can say if it took me half an hour, you could just say 0.5, right? If it took you something like 10 minutes, you could also just go equals to calculate, and then 10 divided by 60. And that'll give you the time. So I'm going to say it took me 15 minutes. So that's a quarter of an hour. Beading, these earrings take, I'm going to say 5 hours to make. Uploading and posting probably takes me, let's say, half an hour. And packing, we're going to say 10 minutes. So overall, they take about 6 hours. So next is our hourly rate. So this is kind of the big one here. We all know how long it takes to make our beadwork, but how much do we pay ourselves? That's the real question. So first of all, I'm going to start with minimum wage. In BC, it's $14.65. I'm going to round that up to 15. The next thing is your experience. So how long have you been beading? Have you been doing this for just a couple years, or have you been doing this for 20 years? You have to pay yourself accordingly. I've only been doing this 1 year, so I'm going to put in 1. And with this, we're going to give ourselves a raise accordingly. So when it comes to experience, I think a 20% raise is fair. On average in the real world with random jobs, whatever they are, 10 to 20% is a reasonable rate for each year. So we're going to give ourselves 20 because we know beadwork is a lot of work, and every year you do it, the better and better you get. The next thing is credentials. So do you have any related training or education? Do you have a degree in business, art, jewelry making, marketing, anything like that? And have you taken any classes for special techniques like tufting, quilling, loom work, things like that? And let's put them in here. So again, we're working in years. So for myself, I have a diploma in fashion and I have a degree in business. So I'm going to give myself 6 years for credentials here. So you can see now that's coming out with an hourly rate of 27. So putting that together, now we know how much our labor actually costs. It's about $160, right? So this is definitely going to change your perspective on how much your time is worth. Now you can totally play with these numbers. If you see 27 and you think that is way too much, I am paying myself more than I should, you could play with these numbers a little bit more. But really take into account your worth and realize that you should be paying yourself a little bit more than you probably think you should. Especially as women, we tend to underestimate our worth. We tend to not ask for raises as much as men do. So make sure that you are giving yourself a fair amount. Okay, so based on this, I could take this number and jump back into my pricing sheet if I want. Or I can just take these and plug them in. So time, 6 hours, and let's round that to 25. So labor is going to be $150. Our cost is only $3, so we're coming up to about $153. The next thing is our profit margin. So it's important that you not just pay yourself for your time and your materials, that's simply breaking even. So I have some examples here. Are you using a website to sell your beadwork, or are you selling on Etsy? What kind of supplies do you have? Obviously, we're all using needles that obviously aren't going to come off of your regular material costs, but they are relevant to your business. As well as if you use any equipment or things like looms, those are going to affect your costs. And next you've got office supplies. So are you using a printer for all of your labels? When you're printing out people's order forms, are you including that as well? And lastly, it's important that you put a little bit of money towards expanding your business. Do you want to explore other avenues? For instance, I sell beadwork and other jewelry, but recently I just ordered a bunch of stickers of my beadwork. And with that, I had to invest over $100 in getting these stickers made, which means that I needed that extra money to put towards this. So keep that in mind when you're coming up with your profit margin. So here I've just got it set to 20%. You can play with this and see how it plays with your price as well as your profit in dollars. So if I change this to 50, that would basically be doubling our price, right? So then we're looking at $300. It means that 153 goes towards the labor, and then 153 goes right in your pocket and towards your business. 50% can be a little high dependent on how much it costs to make your product. Right? If we had something a lot cheaper that only took you half an hour to make, then that might be a little bit different. For this item, I'm going to set it, we'll bring it back to 20. So that means that I should be pricing at 191. And the last thing to consider is your costs related to your transactions. So whether you're using Etsy, Shopify, or PayPal, you're going to have a transaction fee that comes off of every sale you make. So Etsy is the highest price at 5% plus 30 cents, whereas Shopify and PayPal are under 3% and 30 cents. So you're going to see here, based on this price that I have up here, this is how much it's going to be taken away and goes towards the hosting platform of your choice. If you're using something like e-transfer or cash, this isn't going to be relevant, but if you're selling online, these are all going to be relevant to you. So with that in mind, it's going to take off a little bit extra, and you're going to go over here and depend on what you're using. If you're using Etsy, then you'll see your price is $191, your cost is going to be $162, including that fee, and what you're actually going to be taking is about $28 to put towards your business. And your margin is going to go down to 14%. The thing I also like about this spreadsheet, it compares different platforms and helps you decide what is going to make the most sense for your business. I used to sell on Etsy exclusively, and I found that when I was looking at my financials at the end of the month, that Etsy was taking a lot in fees. And once I realized kind of how much I was making versus how much were being taken out in fees, I realized that I wanted to go with Shopify instead. Now that we've done our costing, we're going to look back at our 3 C's. So when it comes to consumer, we want to consider how much our customers are willing or able to pay. For instance, I know that a lot of my customers are in the 18 to 35 range, so when it comes to their financial ability, there's a lot of variance, which is why I offer products at a variety of prices so everyone can buy something. Next, we have competition. So in this case, I like to use competition more as a benchmark than as a way to undercut other people's prices. So I do this just by looking at what other people are offering for similar products, so I know if my price is way out there or way too low. Lastly, the other considerations are your business goals and your overall pricing strategy. So is it your goal to make this your full-time job, or are you just doing it part-time and pursuing something else career-wise? As well as, are you planning on expanding your business like I mentioned before? And last is thinking about your prices not as just individual items, but as an overall strategy. Not all of your products have to have the same margin. You could have some with a very small margin and others with a much larger one so that it evens out to a good margin overall. Also, when it comes to your brand prices, what is the image that you want your brand to have? It is a luxury brand or is it an accessible brand? Are you donating any proceeds, and how does that overall affect your bottom line? Putting all those things in mind, you can kind of come up with a strategy that works best for your business and your goals. So I hope this breakdown helped you work through this spreadsheet and you understand how to use it. I used a simple example with a pair of my earrings to help you see how much it's going to cost. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment below and I'll happily answer them. If you need me to make any follow-up videos explaining this in more detail or showing you more examples, I will happily do so. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, please subscribe, and I'll happily be making more on how to bead, how to run a beading business, and any other insights I can offer.